Welcome to the Beauty in Battle podcast, where we talk about winning in marriage by waging a war. I'm Jason Benham. I've got my girlfriend / wife, Tori Benham, with me, and we are here to talk to you about how Satan tries to get you to fight face to face with your spouse, but God designed you to fight shoulder to shoulder against Satan so that you can win in your marriage. Fighting together draws you together. We cannot wait to jump in. So here we go. So today we're talking about how to win your spouse, but specifically we're answering the question that we get asked quite a bit. What do you do when you're doing your part, but maybe your spouse isn't doing theirs, right?
Yep. It's not always easy. It's like a lot of times we get people reaching out and they're like, I get it and it makes sense what you're saying, but like it's so hard if there's not anything coming from the other end, right?
Yeah.
Like it is, and that's challenging. And so we're going to kind of get into some things that will help you with that.
Yeah. Relationships are two-way streets. And what we say is that your marriage is only as healthy as the least healthy person. Okay. Now this may not be a health thing. Your marriage is only as strong as the effort of each partner. So if one partner is putting 100% effort, but the other partner is putting 60% effort, then your marriage is only going to get to 60%. Mm-hmm. And so now what do you do in situations like that? Because obviously you can't just be a nag the whole time and cry and complain and, moan and that kind of stuff. I mean, you've got to live a life. You probably have kids that you need to raise, and you also want to win your spouse. Like, it's not like you have to win over your spouse in terms of like you have to win their affection again and all that kind of stuff. You just need to get your spouse to where they're on the same page as you. Mm-hmm. And so Tori and I have been talking a lot about this. And what's really great is Tori spent some time thinking about this. Like what did she do when she needed to win me? Because in the first start of our marriage, we kind of went through that, in the first 5 years or whatever, where I was kind of off doing my thing. And Tori's like, wait, where's my husband? Like, we're not on the same page anymore. So we want to answer that question. What do you do when your spouse doesn't seem to be as interested in doing their part, but you're doing your part? Right. So we're going to answer that question. But before we do, I have a great song for you.
Okay.
It's called "I Choose You" by Forrest Black. All right.
This is a good one.
Oh, it's a good one for sure. His voice is a little high pitched, so for some reason, whenever I play it on the microphone here, to me, it was a little hard to hear, but let's see if you can hear it. But Forrest Black, "I Choose You." You'll like it. Fall in my arms, Tor.
I choose you.
Yeah, no matter what this life puts you through, I choose you. Yeah, see, that was a little hard to hear.
Yeah, it is. You guys need to look it up and listen to it, because that did not give it justice at all. It didn't come through very well.
Yeah, but I wanted you to hear, Forrest Black, "I Choose You." So that's a good one. All right, Tori, you ready to dive in? All right, here we go. So 3 steps. Tori has come up with 3 steps on what you can do when maybe your spouse isn't pulling as much weight as you, or you have a goal for your marriage, but it seems like your spouse is kind of dragging a little bit and not jumping in with you. What can you do? I'll give you, do you want me to go ahead and give?
Yeah, before you do though, I think that before we give the 3 letters, it's when you are the one who wants change. You're the one, you've located the problem, right? Yeah. You know that you want something different. And so the person that first is like, I want something better than this. I want more than this. The person that has that desire, they have more motivation. They have more drive. Yeah. They have a little bit more energy to put into it because they want it.
Right.
Desire is so important. And so if you're the one with that desire, then you are the one that can act. Yeah. You're the one that can take initiative and can do something about it. Mm-hmm. And it's so important that you feel that agency, that you feel like I can change the direction of this, because, and that's why we're choosing the acronym ACT.
Yeah. ACT, A-C-T. And I'll just give you all three real quick, and then we're going to go back and dive into each. So 3 steps that you can do when your spouse doesn't seem to be doing their part, but you're doing your part and you really want them to catch on. What do? Number 1, you ask. Number 2, you connect. Number 3, you trust. You ask God for his help. You connect with your spouse. You trust the process. All right, let's think about asking. When you're asking God for his help, and I love this because you're bringing God into the situation. Remember, a healthy marriage isn't just 2 people, it's 3 people, where God is the third party. And God is not just your father, he's your father-in-law. So God knows everything that you don't know about his son or daughter that would unlock their heart. Like, he knows these things. And sometimes you may be in a situation to where your wife or your husband is not responding like you want them to, because God wants you to rely on him to get their heart moving in the right direction. The Bible tells us that God directs the king's heart like a water course. So God can change people's hearts. And what I love about this first point, ask, which is asking God for his help, is asking aligns you in the proper authority. Asking implies that God can do something you cannot do. If you have to ask somebody for something, you're implying that person has something that you don't have and that you need.
Yes.
So you're approaching God at the level of need. And that right there gets to his heart.
It's so good.
And if you ask with the right motives, you will receive.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think, for you and I in our relationship, this was the beginning for us where we got married, and, our dating season was kind of magical and amazing. It was long distance. And so our focus was very much on each other. And then we get married and it shifts. It shifts from us just like all in to your focus shifted into providing for our family. And the attention came off of me, and the attention came off of our marriage. Yeah. And I was kind of devastated. I was like, okay.
Poor Tori.
I'm not exactly sure where Jason went, but he's not here anymore.
I was building a business. I was trying to make money.
Yeah. And so that was the beginning of asking for me, because I knew what I wanted and it wasn't what we had. Yeah. And so I began to ask and cry out to the Lord. But what the Lord did for me in that season was he began to show me that my needs had to be first met through him. And then they could be met through you.
That's
but
good.
I had to first find my security ultimately had to be in him, because my security was shifting to you in an unhealthy way. And he had to bring some alignment. And so he used that season to do that. So God he doesn't waste anything. He's super resourceful. So he used that season to grow me closer to him and to grow my security in him first. And then, he answered that prayer years later. And then for you, we had 3 kids, and you're really just going after God in your business and just like, God, I'll do whatever you tell me through scripture. I'm going to apply this to our business. And God was showing you and downloading all these things. But then he was like, no, well, you tell him what he
out of the middle of nowhere, 5 years into our marriage, I'm praying for our business. I'm like, hey man, we're getting some momentum. This is great. God, I see you as my business partner. And in the middle of praying for my business early one morning, the Lord just convicted me. Why don't you pray for your wife like you're praying for your business? And so then I started doing that. And if you read our book, you know exactly what God did over the next 2 weeks. He rocked my world and put me on the right path. But I want to just pause for a second. My prayers to God about Tori were preceded by her prayers about me. Right. So I had been off kind of doing my thing. She was putting in, let's just say 100% effort to the marriage. I was putting in 60%, and she prayed that God would change my heart. And so when I'm up in the morning praying, the Lord did that. He literally dropped it into my mind and into my heart. So that's where ask comes in. Yeah. Is you're asking God, jump in. God, you're not just my father, you're my father-in-law. And so you know that your son or daughter, you know what it takes to get them moving. So would you?
Yes.
So you ask God.
Yeah, exactly. This verse in Philippians is just so powerful. And I think it just breaks it down very, very nicely. It says, be anxious for nothing, but with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses understanding, will guard your heart and mind through Christ Jesus. We've heard that
Such
1,000 times.
Good verse.
But just think about it. Like if you really break it down, be anxious for nothing, but with prayer and supplication.
Can I stop real quick before you do the prayer and petition? The whole anxious, remember, fear is about a past or a present threat.
Yeah.
Anxiety is about a future threat. Anxiety is projecting fear into the future. So what happens oftentimes in a marriage is one spouse is giving their best, the other spouse is not. And then the spouse who's giving their best can look and project powerlessness into the future, can project fear into the future. Oh no, what's going to happen? Like you're looking into the future and you're kind of projecting fear. And the Bible is telling us very specifically, when that happens, don't do it. So how are we supposed to overcome it? That's where we go into the prayer and petition with Thanksgiving part.
Yeah, asking. And what asking does is it sets your intent, right? It's like
it's good.
You're saying what you want. And this is, it's so important. We come back to this all the time. Like what is your desire? What do you want? Because you move towards the things that you focus on, right? Yeah. So I want a stronger relationship with Jason. I want him to want that with me as well, so that we can thrive in this, in this marriage relationship together, right? That's what I wanted. And so I began to ask God for that. So it set my intent. I still want it, God. Here I am on the bathroom floor.
Here we are again.
Still wanting. But it sets your intent, and it's so important. And we talk about the RAS, the RAS.
That's the reticular activating system, which is your brain filter. Our brains have 50 to 60,000 subconscious thoughts a day, but only a small percentage of those make their way into our conscious thoughts. Well, how do we get the subconscious thoughts deep down to actually manifest in our conscious thoughts? Well, we do that by setting our intent. Yeah. By focusing on it, by focusing on something specific. So when you do that, and then you take that intentional prayer to the Lord and you ask him for that thing, our Bibles are very clear. You will get what you ask for when you ask with the right intent. And if your intent is to connect with your spouse, God's son or daughter, he'll give it to you. It may take some time, but he'll do it. That's why asking is so important.
What's that verse? The effectual
fervent prayer of a righteous person, availeth much.
My grandmother was a fervent prayer, and I remember feeling like, wow, does she just like ask for the same thing over and over and over and over and over again? And it's like, doesn't God just know what you want? Like, why do we have to keep on bringing it before him? Well, it's for us. It's to keep our focus on what he wants us to keep our focus on. And so you don't stop asking. You pray without ceasing. There's something behind that. And now we can see it in neuroscience that when you continue to keep your focus on something, you move towards it. Yeah. And so that's why it's important to have that fervent prayer.
Yeah. It does remind me of our son, Jake, when he was really young. He used to ask me and Tori for stuff all the time. I'm talking 20 to 30 requests a day.
Yes.
And then our daughter, Allie, who was just 2 years older than him, and I think she was probably 10 years old or something at the time. And all of a sudden, Jake, after about the 35th request on a certain day.
Wait a minute. First, you got to set it up. We were in a store at the beach.
Oh.
We're at a store at the beach. Jake continuously asking for something from the store for us to buy for him. Can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? Right? Okay.
Yeah. And then
there's a bunch of people around.
Allie, she didn't do it at the top of her lungs, but it was loud enough to embarrass any parent. She said, "Jake, you're such an asker."
But she prolonged the ASS part.
You're such an asker. We're like, oh my gosh.
And it was like slow motion. We're like, what is she? She said asker.
Gonna do it.
She said
She did not. She didn't say the word I think you thought she said. Yes. She didn't do it.
Oh my gosh, that was funny.
But anyway, when it comes to winning your spouse, being an asker, specifically asking God, is a very important thing. Okay, now.
Moving on to the next thing, prayer and supplication with thanksgiving.
That's good.
With thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. Thanksgiving changes your perspective.
Everything.
Because when you are focused on what the other person, your spouse is not doing, and how you are constantly the one leading this thing, you're the one that's doing your part. They're not doing their part, right? That's not in a spirit of thanksgiving. That's good. In a spirit of comparison, right? But you need to be in a spirit of thanksgiving. Yeah. And that will change your perspective. And your history with God has to be louder than your history with your spouse.
That's good.
Because you're going to have a history with your spouse where we don't say this, but we think it is, because you're not supposed to say always and never.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. We're like, he always does this.
Yeah.
He never does this. He always does this, right? It's this, you're focusing on what's wrong.
Yeah. And then that leads to contempt.
And you're focusing on your history with man.
Yeah.
Right? With your spouse. But when you focus, Thanksgiving comes from focusing on your history with God. Has he not been faithful before? Could you trust? Think about a time where you trusted him, and when your faith intersected with his faithfulness. Now you have a testimony to stand on.
That's right.
And so our Thanksgiving comes not because we have this amazing history with our spouse that makes us super thankful, but we have a history with God where we can't help but be thankful.
Yeah, I love that. It's the power of gratitude. We talk about it a lot. Okay, so that's point number 1, ask. Ask God for his help. Point number 2, connect with your spouse.
Yeah.
Okay, now you're not just really connecting with your spouse, you're also connecting with God. But see, in the ask phase, that's when you are connecting with God. So connect with God first. You're doing that whenever you ask. But then what you want to do is focus on connection with your spouse. Okay, what does that mean? Tori and I have talked about healthy marriage habits. We've talked about focusing in on just doing the fun things that you can do together. Doesn't matter what it is. And if your spouse is having a hard time connecting with you on any level, find out what they like to do and do it with them.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if you're trying to connect with your husband and he likes fishing and you can't stand it. Guess what? Go fishing with him.
Yes.
You know, and just watch what happens.
Totally.
You know, and I'm a guy, so I can only give you this from a guy's perspective. But, you know, in Psalm 100, verse 4, it says, enter God's gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Wives, if you want to get in touch with your husband and you want to connect with them, start that way.
Yes.
Thank them for what they do. Praise them for who they are.
Right.
And just doing that on a consistent basis, your husband's going to open up.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to open up.
So if you're in a relationship where you feel like it's not healthy enough to bring up issues, it's just like this perpetual cycle of issues that you have, and you just constantly come back to them and you've talked about them and you're trying to set your spouse straight, but it just doesn't seem to bring anything from those conflicts. This is where you focus on connection. We have to do this with our kids, right? Like when an issue arises, 2 things manifest: the issue itself, and then the ability of
the person to handle the issue.
Yeah, to handle the issue. And
number 2 is good. Number 1 will always take care of itself.
right. But what do you do when
number 2 is not good?
Number 2 is not good. You focus on connection.
Yeah, you don't do what Amber Heard did and go number 2 on the bed. How about that?
Oh my gosh.
Can't believe I went there.
That was quick.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you that one.
That's so funny. Not good.
Yes. When you focus on back to the point, connection. Yeah. When you focus on connection, we talked about this with our daughter, Lundy. She, sorry to beat a dead horse. Is that the right saying?
Yeah,
but I feel like we bring these same stories up over and over because they work. But when Lundy busted open her eye, and her eye, the bone in her eye was shattered, and so her eye was literally sunken in, and we had to have surgery done. But we could not have the surgery done until inflammation went down and healing took place. We had to wait for like 3 weeks to let Lundy heal before we could address the actual issue.
Connection is an anti-inflammatory.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, buddy.
So when you are not in a place in your relationship where you can do surgery, where you can go, where you can talk about things and get resolve, get healing, if you're not there yet, focus on connection. Yeah. Connection brings healing. It's exactly what Jason just said. It allows the inflammation to go down. And so that's why it's so important to focus on connection. We have to do this with our kids. It's like, okay, they're clearly not taking ownership on some of these issues, right? They're just kids. They're immature. They're like, well, we need to focus on connection with them. We need to focus on building our relationship so that we can have a voice into their lives. And
so that connection though, but think about this. If you're going to connect with your kids, how do you do it as a parent? It's not by trying to talk the kid into doing what you want. What do? You do what they want.
Exactly.
So that's that's what I'm talking about. So if one spouse is doing their best and the other spouse is not, then the spouse who's doing their best has to go to the level of the one who's not.
So true.
Find out what that spouse wants to do or would love doing and do it. So in our first 5 years of marriage, one thing that Tori really did with me is she knew that I loved college football, like college football on a Saturday morning. So guess what Tori started doing? She started putting football on in the morning. And then while I was watching a little college football, being Mr. Selfish there, she would be making wings and doing stuff. And the next thing you know, a couple of years later, Tori found herself actually enjoying college football. And I found myself not being so addicted to college football. And I started gravitating to the kitchen and sitting with her while she was making food and stuff. And so now, obviously, you guys know, if you know us, you know we both love watching college football together. Yeah. Not the whole day, but just, she's in the kitchen and we're doing our thing. But that's exactly what Tori did there, was that she knew that one way she could connect with me on a very small level was to allow the game to be on and she would ask me questions like, okay, what is this thing? What is that? And next thing you know, she starts to understand college football, and like even this year, we watched Coach Prime on Amazon. And so
I love it.
It had the story.
Love it now. And I think honestly, if I'm being totally honest, another reason that I love to watch football is because you were like calm and like you were in a good mood when football was on. It was like your mind wasn't on work. You're like, you were kind of like coming down off the work day, and I loved it. So let's not paint this picture. I'm some saint.
She's a saint, but thank the Lord, things are a little bit different now, but that focus on connection. So step number 1, ask God for his help. Step number 2, focus on connecting with your spouse. Step number 3, trust the process. So we got ask, connect, trust, ACT, ask, connect, trust the process. And what is the process? The process is that you're going to keep asking. Yes. You're going to keep focusing on connection. And then you're going to trust that God's going to do what God does. Yes. In 1 Peter 3, 1-2, Peter was addressing the fact that when Jesus came, the Holy Spirit then comes down. Once Jesus left the earth and he gives us the Holy Spirit, now all of a sudden, there's no male nor female. There's no slave nor free. There's no Jew nor Gentile. Everybody is on an even playing field. And in a male-dominated culture, this was revolutionary. Yeah. That the gospel actually elevated women to the same level as men. It was like incredible. And so what started to happen, though, was that husbands and wives, like if a husband got saved, but the wife wasn't, or the wife got saved and the husband wasn't, they started to ask questions like, well, do we need to get a divorce? Like, how does this work? And obviously the answer to that was no, stay right where you are. And so a wife had asked a question, and then Peter responds when she basically asked, hey, so do I need to, divorce my unbelieving husband? He doesn't want, obviously we're on different pages at this point. So in 1 Peter 3, 1-2, listen to what he says. He says, wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of the wife when they see the purity and reverence of your life. Yeah. So it's like showing respect, doing the stuff that you do. Guess what you're going to do? You will win them over, right? And he says you can even do it without words. That's why we're saying, ask God, take him to it, focus on connection. You're not saying, you're not giving your best, you're not doing this. Now, granted, sometimes you're going to have a difficult conversation, and you might have to have that conversation with your spouse and say, I would really like for you to give your best. Okay. Yeah. I get it. Don't let that be the routine. Just ask God, focus on connection, and then trust the process. And then God promises that he'll come in and do his part. Yeah. Strength arises when you wait upon the Lord. Yeah. And you have to, in order for strength to happen, you have to trust the process. I think about when we first started CrossFit, and I walked in there and I just had Lundy, and I felt so incredibly weak. I was like, I'm definitely not a CrossFit girl, because these girls are like beasts, and I haven't lifted a weight. I don't think I ever lifted weights up until that point in my life. Yeah. And I remember seeing a couple of the girls, they were so strong, and I recognized that that's what I wanted. I wanted to be strong. And I saw them doing pull-ups, and I was like, okay, my goal is I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to be able to do pull-ups. Yeah. But I went to do a pull-up
I couldn't do a pull up. And they had these bands, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was embarrassing to me because nobody else was using these bands, and I was the one that had to wrap this thing around my leg and use a band to get stronger. But I had to trust the process. You don't get strong by just wanting to be strong.
Yeah.
You have to start moving. You have to start exercising. You have to take the steps. You have to trust the process. And I remember Steve saying, you will get these pull-ups. Just start with this band, then go to a smaller band, and then an even smaller band. And before long, you're going to be doing these pull-ups. And I have to trust that process and just take the steps and wait and wait and wait and work. Right.
Yeah.
And then before long, I could do a pull-up. Then I could do 5 pull-ups. I could do 10. Should I keep going?
Yeah. I like that. 10 pull-ups, 12. You can do about 20 now, I think.
Yeah. I could do a lot of pull-ups. And if you would have told me that I could do that, that I'd be able to do that, I just don't even know. Like, it's just felt so far-fetched, but you just trust the process. You keep moving. And I think sometimes in relationships, it's so hard because you want to go from A to D, and you don't want to go through steps B and C. You just want to get there. It's just, I want to be there now, but you have to take the steps to get there. You have to trust the process, and you have to know that strength arises when you wait on the Lord. Be patient, keep going, stay patient.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for me and for you. It was like this, okay, I'm praying for this, I'm asking for this, I'm doing what I can do, right? And now it's a waiting game.
And then when you're trusting the process, you're making sure that you are winning the battle in your mind. Mm-hmm. If you didn't listen to our last podcast, go tune into that one. I forget even what we titled it. I should probably had it pulled up, but it was all about winning in your mind.
Yeah.
And so you have to take those negative thoughts captive, replace the lies with truth, right? So how are you going to win your spouse? How are you going to win them over when your spouse doesn't seem to be giving the same effort as you? You're going to do these 3 things. You're going to ask God for his help. Mm-hmm. You're going to focus on connecting with your spouse, and then you are going to trust the process. And in time, God will do what only God can do.
And I want to leave you guys with a verse about trust too. It is good to trust upon the Lord Jehovah better than to trust upon man. That's Psalms 118:8. It is good to trust upon the Lord. When you are put in a position where you have to put your trust in the Lord, that is a very good thing.
Yeah.
It's a very good place for you to be.
It is.
I remember the Lord gave that to me with when Lundy, she had the accident, and they told us that she had permanent eye damage and that she may never not see double again. And I found that verse. I was like, no, this is good for me to have to trust the Lord. This is a good thing for me to be. This is a good place for me to be. I'm going to put my trust in him. And so if you're in a place right now where you haven't seen the results you want and you've been waiting for a long time, and let me just tell you, it is good to trust the Lord. You're in a good place, and God's going to give you the strength and get you to where he wants you to be in your relationship. Don't give up.
Strength comes through strain. God is very good at orchestrating difficulty to teach you how to trust him. God's not just your father. He's your father-in-law. Keep pursuing the heart of his son or daughter. Take these 3 steps, ask him for his help, connect with your spouse, and trust the process, and then watch what he does.
Amen.
You got a, what is it called?
A recipe.
A recipe. Okay. A receipt.
A receipt.
A receipt.
Okay. So last week I made fettuccine Alfredo twice.
Oh, it was banging.
It is such an easy meal. I had to share it with you guys. We did it with one day we did it with zucchini noodles. Yeah. And then a couple days later I did it with butternut squash.
Which I like noodles. The butternut squash better.
Definitely liked that better. You can also do this if you're trying to go like low carb. You could do Banza chickpea pasta is really good. Allie, our daughter, has been making a bunch of recipes with this and loving it. So
I'm proud of Allie.
She's impressing.
She's crushing it. I never thought that she would like cooking or anything like that, but
I know
she's catching on.
I get texts every week. Can you send me this recipe? Can you send me this recipe? So fettuccine. That's why I love having our Jason and Tori account, because I'm like, I have them all there for her.
Yeah.
Okay, so fettuccine Alfredo, I'm going to share it with you guys. it is a dinner on the table in less than 20 minutes.
And it's healthy. It's not the crap, like you would eat at Olive Garden or whatever.
Yep. I did
it's
it
good
with
stuff.
chicken thighs. Couple tips. If you don't have a thermometer for your meat, you need to get one. That's going to make it so much easier. And your chicken's going to be better because you're not going to be overcooking it.
Freak out from salmonella.
Yeah, exactly. Get it to 165 and be done.
Yeah. Okay? Dark meat chicken's kind of hard to cook because it doesn't ever really look like it's cooked.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I'm going to share the recipe with you on Jason Tori Instagram, but it's basically all you need is chicken thighs. You need some butter, fresh garlic, noodles of your choice. We love the butternut squash. At our Harris Teeter, they always do like half off their in the produce aisle, their squash, like when it needs to be eaten, and it's totally amazing. It doesn't taste bad at all because you just steam it anyways. And so that's why we've been doing the butternut squash. There's no way I would be making these into noodles myself. Like you have to buy them prepared.
Although when we did go to Florence, Italy, we got off the train.
Gosh, yes.
We walked out and there was a restaurant where a girl was making the pasta right there.
Yes. And
it was incredible.
I ordered fettuccine Alfredo and they brought out a Parmesan wheel. Or was it
it was the whole wheel, and then they carved it out so it was hollow, and that's where they made the sauce.
They literally fired up the whole and made the fettuccine Alfredo inside the Parmesan wheel. It was crazy.
Or we are in Italy.
Yeah. So that, so ever since then, we like some fettuccine Alfredo.
Yeah, we do.
And then you're going to need fresh Parmesan. Get the grated Parmesan, from the cheese, where the grated cheese, not the grated cheese, the shredded cheese is, makes it a lot easier. This is, if you want it to be an under 20-minute meal, it's comes in a 1.5 cup bag. And then that's it. That's all you need. I did half milk and half heavy cream and butter, a garlic clove, and fresh Parmesan, and then the noodles. That is it. That's all you need. And it was and chicken thighs. So I'll share that. I'll share how I did that. Couldn't be easier. Can't get a meal on the table faster.
Yeah, it was really good. And I think I ate so much that first night, I had a hard time, pushing it through the system the next day.
Okay. All right. TMI.
So all I could say is if you're going to crush it, go digestive enzyme afterwards, and then you'll be fine.
All right, guys.
Thanks for hanging with us, Tor. Thank you for that. That was really good. That's obviously the process that you use for the God to get a hold of my heart, but asking God for your help, connecting with your spouse, trusting the process, good things are going to happen. We love you guys.
We'll see you next week.
Peace.